Merry Christmas. This is our Frederick Riddle with another episode of Christian News and Views. And I believe this is episode 43. And so we're going to get into Christmas, but I wanted to show you something here that I don't know if like that. That's talking about my church. And we put on a thing called well, actually, they got the title wrong. They have a Bethlehem experience. It's actually Experience Bethlehem, but that's okay. And it talks about Tri-City Baptist Church, which is my church, and a whole article in here about what our church did. And over 2,700 people came to our church. The whole activity was outside under a tent. And we're not able to, right now, use our church buildings. They're still in recovery from Milton. But we did put that on 2 different weekends. And over almost 2,700 people went through that. They heard the gospel. They saw it with their own eyes, heard it with their own ears. That's amazing. And I give them a shout out. They did a tremendous job. Now, today we're going to look at a subject that I think is important. We often hear some negative things out of this passage, but I want to go into a subject here that I have some opinions on, and I'm going to share those opinions with you. In Luke chapter 2, verse 6, it says, "And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered." So, by the way, this is Bible news. It's the news of the day, of that day. And I want you to focus in on this part here. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. We usually think of them as arriving in Bethlehem, getting a place to stay, which is a stable, and she delivered the baby that very same night. That's probably not the way it went. It was probably more of a series of days. I see Joseph going around town and visiting different places. And so let me get my phone here so it's working here. I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, but because of the situation where I've got it set up and everything, I want to have some notes available to me because I want to get this right, because I'm giving you a different way of looking at things here. I think it enriches the story when you see it. So the title of this is No Room in the Inn. And you've all heard it, you've seen the plays, you heard the music and so forth. But was it quite that way? Let's look. In verse 6 here, I said that he may have searched for several days for lodging. You got to understand, this was a command that came from Rome. A pagan king had ordered everybody, I think it was everybody in the empire, not just Israel, everybody in the empire, they had to go to their hometown, if you will. I don't know if Joseph was ever born there or ever been there before, but that his lineage was that of David. And so that's where David was born. And so he had to travel back there, and he couldn't leave his wife alone because she was pregnant, so he took her along with him. The idea was to go there to pay their taxes to Rome. Well, and 2 weeks later, he was going to have to go to Jerusalem. And so Bethlehem is only 6 miles from Jerusalem. So he got there. It was full. It was crowded. It's called, the song, Little Town of Bethlehem, is right spot on. It's just a little bitty town. It still is. So he would have searched there and heard the no room. Now, first of all, let's clarify something. What do they mean by no room in the inn? What do they mean by the word inn? That is not Motel 6. That is not some motel that you can go to. That is not a hotel. It's not even a modern day bread and breakfast, although you might compare it to it a little bit. But these were private homes, and they would rent out their rooms, and it could have been everything, including a stable. Uh, and that was not common. The stable part was not a common thing, but it was something that they could do. So no room meant that they went from place to place to place. And I think that this possibility that the innkeeper here that we always hear about is actually a representative innkeeper representing many of them. It could have taken place over several days, and they would have gone up and down the streets of Bethlehem searching for a place, just a place to stay so she could have her baby. But they kept hearing, no room, no room, no room. So it was probably a private home, and I already mentioned all that. So we're going to focus on this last innkeeper. What happened when they arrived at this innkeeper's home? I mean, picture in your mind, Joseph and Mary have been looking and looking and looking for a place. And they didn't have a place they could stay, so wherever he went, she went with him. And then probably they were staying out under the stars in the meantime at night because they didn't have any place to stay. But they needed a place to stay, and she was getting closer and closer to that due date. So they arrived at this house, and I don't know who answered the door first, but we're going to assume it was the innkeeper. But the wife heard it and heard the talking, and she came to the door as well. And when they looked out, they saw a couple. Now, what did they see? Well, I think the first thing they would have seen was Mary. It was obvious that she was very, very pregnant. She was ready. But they saw more than that. They saw a woman who was tired, drawn out, worn out. A woman who may have been feeling the pains that a woman feels quite often prior to giving birth, especially just before birth. And so they may have seen all this. They also would have seen a man, her husband Joseph, who was desperate. He saw the pain his wife was in. Then he felt helpless. He was a carpenter, not a doctor. And he may have dealt with animals at times in giving birth, but that's not exactly the same thing as a human being giving birth. Similar, and that would have helped him. But he was desperate. He needed to have a place to stay where they could have shelter, where she could have a safe delivery. So, a very pregnant woman, a desperate husband, and a tired couple. But there's one more thing they would have seen. A real need. Now, they had the same situation everybody else had. All their rooms were taken. And the first words out of his mouth were probably, "I'm sorry, but we don't have any room." Now, maybe it was the wife that came up with what? Women are quite often more sensitive than men, so that's possible. Or he may have been moved by the Spirit. God moves on people, whether they're saved or unsaved, to do things. But somewhere in that conversation, the idea came up. And I picture the conversation going something like this. The innkeeper speaks and he says, "Look, I don't have any rooms. I really don't. But I do have a stable. It's not clean. It's not ready for anybody to stay in. We'll try to clean it up for you as much as we can. And we'll give you one corner of the stable. The animals will have to be there too, but it will provide shelter from the rain, if there is any. It will provide shelter, even some shelter from the elements. And you could even have a little fireplace there maybe. But it's going to be dirty. It's going to be filthy. It's going to stink. But that if that's okay with you, if you're willing to take that, then we will let you have that. Now, did he charge rent? Well, the Bible doesn't say. We find him there, and we think that once they got there, they may have stayed there. It may have been another day or two before she had her baby. So, whatever length of time that she needed there, according to the Bible, again, it says here, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. Well, if you could broaden that statement out a little bit, that she should be delivered, can that term be used to take in the days after the baby was born? I think it can, but we don't know, or at least I don't know. I'm taking a guess here, but not only the birth of the child, but also the days following that. And so it touched their hearts. It touched the hearts of this innkeeper and his wife. So the normal picture we get is a cold-hearted innkeeper. I don't think that was the case at all. I think they were compassionate. And here's some of the things that I think that they showed. I said it touched their hearts. And it resulted in they showed compassion. The very fact that he was able to offer them the stable. Now, like I said, in looking that up, and in the past I've come across where stables were sometimes used. So it wasn't necessarily a new idea, but it was probably not a common idea, simply because of the stench and the filth and everything. That's not a normal place for anybody to stay, whether they're having a baby or not. And so that would not have been something that they would have been on the top of his mind. But he had the stable, and he was using it for whatever animals he had. So he opened that stable up. He had compassion on him. You don't hear that normally. But here is compassion, a demonstration of the kind of compassion that you and I should have upon strangers. Somebody comes and needs help. We see in the New Testament, well, this is in the New Testament for that matter, but in the New Testament we also have where I believe it was Jesus was telling the story of somebody coming and knocking and asking for bread or something like that, and not to turn them away. Being neighborly is part of our Christian lifestyle, our worldview, if you will. Part of that. We are to be compassionate towards other people. Now, if we can't help them, we can't help them. But just to say to somebody, well, I can't, you have a bad situation, Godspeed, may God go with you, and then you close the door. That's not compassion. Compassion might be as simple as, you know what, there's nothing I can do to help you, but I know that down the street here there's a place where you can. They have a stable down there. That might have been how they got that stable. We don't know, but we do know that compassion by somebody was shown so that they could have a place to stay. They showed ingenuity. Well, I just gave you one example here, the neighbor. But how about themselves? Hey, we have a stable. It's filthy. It stinks. It's definitely not where I would want my child to be born, but it's all we have. If you want to use it, you're welcome to use it. That's not only compassion, but that's showing ingenuity. And then another thing here. We find in the story, I'm not going to read it, but we find in the story that they wrapped the baby in swaddling clothes. Now that was a Palestinian, that area of Palestine. It was a tradition, a thing they did. It wasn't necessarily worldwide. It was more of a local thing from what I've read. But it may have been broader than that. This is what somebody else has said. So, and I didn't have the chance to go in and really dig in and deep on that. But swaddling clothes was, what they're saying is that it was a local tradition, a local way of handling things for newborn babies. It's not just a pair of some rags thrown around. It's the swaddling clothes gives me the picture of something that keeps the baby warm, uh, comfortable, and clean. Protects the baby. And to, how many times have you seen a woman today, and she has a baby in its cradle? It's not necessarily just that baby laying there. That baby is usually in a blanket or some kind of thing, and that's what I think of swaddling clothes. You could also include that and maybe the diapers and stuff like that. Again, I did not go into that because I don't think that's all that important. But the thing is, they used their noggin and they thought, here's a problem, and we have the answer. I think that's what happened. I think the wife probably. Uh, he said, as soon as Mary and I'm guessing that where the innkeeper offered it, that Mary spoke up and said, "Sir, if you have a place that we could stay, I don't care. A stable will do for us. We just need a place for us so I can have my baby." And she was desperate. She was in pain, and that would have communicated more of the need. And Joseph, being the loving husband, said, "Okay, if that's good with her, it's good with me." And so they moved into the stable, and the most likely the innkeeper's wife saw a new need, and that's the swaddling clothes, and she went and got something. Oh, by the way, another thing, who provided the food? If they were there for days, and in those days, you didn't buy food for a week or a month or a week or anything. You bought food every day. Well, these were poor people. Now, he may have saved up some money. Well, he he had he had almost the entire 9 months, because it was told to him that she was pregnant. I think it was instantly. It could have been 3 months later when she returned home from Elizabeth. But in either case, he learned about it. So he had, the very minimum, he had 6 months to prepare. And so he probably was saving every bit of money he had. At that time, he was the carpenter. His father is no longer on the scene. Or wait a minute. I'm sorry. This is Jesus. I was talking about Jesus there for a moment. This is Joseph. And so he's the carpenter. There's no brothers or cousins or anybody else like that mentioned. And so as far as we know, he was it. Man, he may have been the only carpenter in that village. You don't know that either. But he would have, it still was not a money-making job. It was not regarded highly. And so he was poor. And he saved every penny he could find. But he was still poor. And so they had to travel all the way to Bethlehem. He had to pay for that. And then when he got there, they lived outdoors, and they probably bought the cheapest food they could find. And now they're in a stable, but they still need food. And now they have, as soon as Jesus is born, they have another need to provide food for the baby. So who provided that food? My thought? How about the innkeeper and his wife? I think that that's a possibility. The Bible doesn't tell us. These are all things taking place that the Bible doesn't talk about, because it's not important to the entire story. The story is not about the innkeeper and his wife. The story is about the birth of Jesus. And so we're not told all that. But I think it enriches the story for us when we see people like that reacting to this, and God was stirring in their hearts compassion, ingenuity. He put the thought in their mind. He pointed this out to them, pointed that. I mean, gave them insights that they may not normally have had. And this is all something that points to us as how we should be. I already mentioned we should be compassionate. Well, God gives each one of us an opportunity to serve Him. Usually multiple. At my church, there are people who serve in multiple areas. I serve in different areas. It's just common in many churches throughout the land. When those churches and the which are made up of people, that's not buildings. Churches are people, not buildings. Those people who love and worship Jesus Christ, who have identified with Him, who've asked Jesus into their lives, into their hearts to save them, they're now His children and they are wanting to do His will. When somebody is wanting to do God's will, God is very pleased with that, and He will use them in ways that they can't even imagine. The ways that God uses me. A few years ago, I would have not even thought, and I have a pretty good imagination, but I would not even have thought of the ways that God uses me now. And so that is just something. When you sell out to God, give yourself over to God to be used of Him, He will use you in ways that just blow your mind. At the same time, when you do it, and you do it well especially, but when you do it, you are showing honor and giving the honor to God. And so we can take from what I think is a truer idea of the innkeeper than what we traditionally get. Because when you just go by the Bible account, you can read that and say, oh, okay, that's not a very nice guy. But when you dig into it and find out what the situation was, and the fact that the inns were not like the inns we have today, but private homes where they rented out their homes, and probably not for very much, because most of the people coming would have been probably poor, especially after they're paying their taxes. But anyhow, they would come and stay, and so this gives us an example. Just as the shepherds gave us an example, and just as we're going to be looking at the kings, the magi, we're going to be looking at them in the next couple of days. And what we're going to see is another example. God gives us examples right here at the birth of Christ of how we should react to Him and how He provides not only for His Son, but He can provide for you and me as well. So that is it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this little take on it, and I want you to think about it. And if you ever have the chance, now Experience Bethlehem has come and gone, but every year our church gives it. And churches throughout the United States do it. Sometimes they call it Experience Bethlehem, sometimes they call it Bethlehem Experience. Whichever the way they call it, it's worth going to it. If you've got children, this is family friendly, and they'll have animals there. Whether or not they allow petting will be up to the people putting it on, of course. But those churches, they go to great expense, a lot of time and effort to give this a truer version of the meaning of Christmas. It goes from His birth all the way up through His death on the cross, His burial in a cave, His resurrection. All that, the entire story is in that Experience Bethlehem or Bethlehem Experience. It's worth going to. And when you hear it come up next year, make sure you get your opportunity to go and see it. It's worth it. If you enjoy this newscast, Christian News and Views, this podcast actually, but I have another podcast called Becoming a Published Author is Fun. Both of them are on this channel, which is provided to you by T&R Independent Books, which is located at trbookservices.com. Go there, check us out. We have a bookstore, got books, got a writing course, got publishing ministry, different things that are there to be available to you. at it's a things are usually on sale. Right now we have a Christmas sale going. So go and check things out and see if you can. Maybe it's a book. Maybe it's a writing course. Maybe you want to write, or maybe you have written and you need to get published. We have that. We have things for you that can benefit you, and give you the opportunity to do the things. If you want to read, or you want to write and get published, these are things we can help you. We can transform your life into becoming a published author. So check it out. And down below here, you have the opportunity to subscribe, and you'll get both of those podcasts, and it'll come right to your channel. You have a great day. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. If you got children, I hope they all have the gifts that they want. And I will see you in the next episode. And again, I apologize for the blank spot here that's going to happen, but because this is temporary setup just for this, I have to leave the chair. You have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.